大学的校友们，你们好，我是新西兰北亚中心的主任 Charlie 高，我的中文名字叫高毅，我也是奥克兰大学的校友。热烈欢迎全球奥克兰华人社区的所有的朋友、老师、学生和朋友们。代表北亚中心，我非常感谢大家参加2021年的中国校友创业俱乐部的活动。Kia ora koutou, and a very warm welcome to the Global University of Auckland Chinese community. I'm Charlie Gao, Director of the North Asia Center of Asia Pacific Excellence, and I'm also an alumnus of the University of Auckland. To all of our Chinese alumni, staff, students, and friends, thank you for joining us for the 2021 Chinese Alumni Club Entrepreneurship Series. You'll hear more about tonight's event from club founder Rachel Yang soon. This series is a testament to Rachel's and the club committee's long-standing dedication. Last year's inaugural virtual edition had over 1,000 tuning in. The club has been engaging the Auckland Chinese community since 2009 and helped support connections across the Global University of Auckland Chinese network. There are more than 34,000 Chinese alumni globally, nearly 26,000 based in Auckland, and just over 53% engaged with the university during the past year. I thought you might all appreciate hearing some news from the university. Although another challenging year, we rose to the occasion. In terms of rankings, the university placed 85th in the 2022 QS World University Rankings and is the only New Zealand university in the top 100. The university also climbed 10 places to 137th in the 2022 Times Higher Education World Universities Rankings and placed 14th in the Times 2021 World's Most International Universities list. Also this year, the university did well in the QS World Subject Rankings with 30 subjects in the top 100 and 10 subjects in the top 50, and was named by Newsweek as one of the world's best maker schools alongside prestigious universities like Harvard, Cambridge, Yale, and MIT. Through uni services, the university generated 192 million of new research contracts and had 74 patents licensed last year. Also last year, China was the top country of origin for international students and more than 4,400 Chinese students. Currently, over 2,500 students are studying with us offshore while borders are closed, nearly 2,000 of whom are in China. The 4 Chinese learning centers with universities in Chongqing, Harbin, Nanjing, and Minnan, established to support our Chinese students, are still going strong. Around 520 students are on campus at the Learning Center in China this semester, with another 50 arriving soon when COVID restrictions are lifted in Nanjing. I also wanted to say a few words about the organization that I represent, the North Asia Center of Asia Pacific Excellence, or as we call it, North Asia Cape, and as I've translated quite simply as being the 新西兰北亚中心. For those who haven't heard of us, we are a relatively new government agency set up by the New Zealand government in 2017. We're hosted by the University of Auckland, and our mission is to support New Zealanders to become more knowledgeable, capable, connected, and ultimately more successful in the region. We work with small and medium-sized businesses to improve their market knowledge in not only China, but also Korea and Japan. We also support tertiary students and educators to realize the opportunities that Asia provides. China, and indeed the entire Asian region, will only become more important to New Zealand in the future. You can find out more about our work by following the link in the closing slides, and I hope that we may meet in person one day once things normalize, maybe at one of our events. In closing, as both an alumnus and representative of the New Zealand higher education sector, our connections and partnerships across the Asia Pacific are very important, and we are pleased to offer opportunities for you to be connected, supported, and engaged through the University of Auckland and Chinese Alumni Club events. I hope you gained some valuable entrepreneurial insights from tonight's event. Thanks again for joining us. And now over to your host for this evening and the event organizer, Rachel Young. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for your comments from the university and 北亚中心。Warm welcome to everyone. 大家晚上好，我是本次活动的主持人 Rachel。再次感谢所有参加活动的校友和朋友们。今年是我们第2次在网上直播，我们邀请到了在新西兰本地以及海外的华人校友们以及朋友们。我们的校友有说普通话和广东话的，所以为了方便交流，本次活动将以英文形式表达。So good evening. Welcome to you all alumni and friends across New Zealand and overseas. My name is Rachel, and I will be your moderator and MC for our second virtual edition of the Entrepreneurship Series seminar. Firstly, I want to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who have generously helped us to make this event possible. Joe, our Alumni Relation Manager, Jody, the Alumni Relation Office, event team, Steph and Kylie, Sam Ying, Scarlett and Samuel from Whole Garden, and lastly but not least, the Chinese Alumni Committee members. We wouldn't have done it without you, so thank you. Today, we're pleased to bring all of you together online. It is incredible to connect all of you virtually, and we hope you can gain some valuable insight from our panel discussion. If you had Zoom all day, I'm sure this one will be a special one, as we only have once a year, and hopefully from this discussion tonight, it'll be adding value to your future career. So before we start this discussion, I will share some background of who we are as a Chinese alumni group and what we do. There just only be a 6 slide. I will keep it quick and short. So the Chinese Alumni Club was founded in 2009 as a platform for our students, alumni, and friends to stay connected with the university and each other. We worked with the university to organize many events, as you can see on the photo, including the Entrepreneurship Series seminar, which has been running since 2013. Every year, we invite successful entrepreneurs from different sectors to share their experience and knowledge, helping entrepreneurs and startups to consider how to start a business and gain some knowledge. Our club is a non-profit organization running by volunteer committee members, whose name, as you can see on the screen. For those who are interested to get involved, please get in touch with me. Our next slide, as you can see, a lot of people. So this is when we participate in University Volunteer Impact Week. So we've been involved in Volunteer Impact Week since 2019. This year, we organized a beach cleaning up at the local beach before the lockdown in partnership with the Sustainable Coastline. Thanks to Chinese Postgraduate Society, local Chinese entrepreneurs, alumni, and friends, volunteers on the day, helping to keep our coastline clean. As you can see on the picture, there are many rubbish we collect on the day. This year, we also started a mentoring program with the postgraduate students. Shout out to Wilson and the team at the Chinese Postgraduate Society. A big thanks to 26 alumni mentors that volunteered to mentor 31 mentees as part of the program. Some quick announcement from some resources that may help you. The university is a content partner with this year's APEC CEO Summit, with New Zealand attendees in Auckland joining virtually with a delegate from around the world on 11th and 12th of November. For more information, as you can see on the screen, there's a link. You can register and find out more. The university also have a Center of Innovation Entrepreneurship Center, which offers support to entrepreneurs. To find out more, as you can see, there's a link there and you can write it down and then you can find out more resources available for you. So this is not ordinary Zoom meetings. So big thanks to our sponsors to make it possible. Whole Garden, 后花园, 生鲜达, and Otia Gift. So let's getting started with tonight's topic. Getting into the entrepreneurial mindset, rethinking growth. We are lucky to have 3 expert startups joining us for this evening conversation. And then they all happen to be university alumni. Justin Lin from Quash, Lucy Law from First AML, and Kenneth Sun from Capstone Law. So tonight's topic will be divided into 3 important parts. What is good growth, how to build up the growth mindset, and looking to the future. So let's start with you first, Justin. Great to have you here. So tell us about yourself and your business, Quash.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel, and to the team behind this event. It's a real pleasure to be here with each and every one of you and everyone on this panel and call. So I'm Justin. I'm Justin Lim, the founder and CEO of Quashed. Essentially what Quashed is, or what I quit my job to go and start essentially about 2 years ago, is this digital insurance platform that we've created. It's a really different experience because it's not just about selling insurance, but actually it's a platform that we envisage people to kind of use all throughout the life cycle of insurance. So managing your existing insurance policies all in one place, being able to kind of find better insurance for you, whether that's in terms of, benefits or prices. And then also, being able to connect with an expert insurance, advisor if you need it to. So really we see Quashed as being the home of your insurance. So we want people to kind of just come to Quash if there's anything that they need to do with the insurance. So that's really a problem that I kind of found. So my background's actually, I started working about 7-8 years ago now in banking. And so that was kind of my start. So I worked across both New Zealand and Singapore, and help to kind of simplify and digitize banking products. And through that experience, I actually thought, hey, there's a real opportunity here because banking, it's obviously got internet banking and there's a lot of banking apps out there now that makes it really easy. But insurance is still quite difficult and mostly people are, not very sure or clear on what the insurance actually looks like and how they're protecting themselves. So when I got married, I decided, hey, let me go take the risk, take that leap of faith and go start Quashed and really give it a crack to see how I can solve the pain of insurance, really. So that's a little bit about me and Quashed and the business I started. So I look forward to sharing more with you all shortly.
Thank you, Justin. Next, we have our Chief of Staff at First AML, Lucy.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And hi, everyone. Nice to be here this evening. I'm going to try and say a little bit of my introduction and company in Chinese because I don't get a chance to practice it much. So 大家好，我是 Lucy。我目前在新西兰一家本地的房洗钱服务公司工作。It's a startup called First AML。我主要负责让我们房洗钱调查过程更高效，让顾客有良好的用户体验。我们的客户主要是律师事务所、房地产公司、会计事务所和金融服务企业。So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Lucy. I hope that gave a little bit of background on the company I work at, which we automate the customer onboarding process regarding AML compliance. So I'm currently the Chief of Staff, which means I work across many different parts of the business, helping with our business planning, but also diving into different functional teams wherever there are some gaps. So my background is I was actually born in Fujian in China, moved here when I was 5 with my family to New Zealand, studied law and finance, then was initially a lawyer in New Zealand. Then we went to Singapore for a few years to work in venture capital. And after that, worked in startups in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and then now I'm back in New Zealand. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I look forward to kind of chatting more later.
Thank you, Lucy. Next, we have Kenneth, who's the founder of Capstone Law. Tell us about yourself, and Kenneth.
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks everyone for joining us this evening. And I hope that some of our experience could be useful for everyone listening. So my name is Kenneth Sun. I'm the founder of a law firm called Capstone Law. 我的中文名是孙公豪然后我是这个鼎石律师事务所的创办人。So Capstone Law is a boutique litigation-focused law firm based in Auckland, New Zealand. I started the firm in July last year, 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, and we've done quite well, and now we have four people in our team, including myself. So before I became a lawyer, I studied engineering. So I was an engineer by training, computer systems engineering by training. I worked as a business consultant for a few years. Then I went to the UK. I did my master's at the University of Cambridge. I came back to New Zealand. I worked in the family business, sold dairy products to China for a number of years. And then I decided, hey, I want to switch my career. I want to start a law firm. I went back to University of Auckland, did my law degree, came out, worked for a few years, and now I've started my own law firm. So hopefully some of my experience in starting a law firm and taking this leap can be useful for everyone tonight. Thank you. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Kenneth. I'm also an entrepreneur, running my own accounting practice called Y Square Chartered Accountant, 魏斯会计事务所, which has provided a lot of opportunities for business as yourself on tax, AML, CFT, compliance, cryptocurrency, and other financial matters. I'm also doing the trainings for business owners who can gain knowledge on how to file their own tax and manage their own tax, and also upskill themselves on zero skills. So talk less about myself and more about you guys. So it's interesting that, like Kenneth, you spent one third of your life studying, from an engineer and turn into an entrepreneur, like a lawyer and an entrepreneur. What encouraged you this change? And can you just, before we start get into the part one of good growth, just give more idea of, what keep you motivated and the change, and then what encouraged you to actually change your career?
Yes, so thank you, Rachel. So first of all, I don't recommend people spending so much time at university, such as myself. Don't do that. It's a bad example. But I did spend a long time, I think almost a decade, at Auckland University. I love Auckland University, but I think I spent way too much time there. So I guess this journey wasn't planned. So like I said, I was an engineer in the beginning. I loved engineering to this day. I love tech. I love using technology to solve problems. But when I left engineering, I went and I worked as a management consultant for a few years. And then it was always a dream of mine to study in the UK, study in Cambridge. So I went there, I did my master's there. And it was in Cambridge that I was exposed to the technology, entrepreneurship, and startup scene in Cambridge. So my master's thesis was actually looking at venture capital firms in Cambridge and looking at startups and looking at their, how they operate. So I got this entrepreneurial bug. So when I came back to New Zealand, I thought, well, my family have a family business exporting dairy products to China. So I thought, I'll give that a go and see if I can apply some of the knowledge I've learned and just take the family business to the next level. So I did that for quite a long time, did it for about 7 years. And then the botulism scare in New Zealand, Fonterra botulism scare happened. I don't know if people recall, but basically there was the food scare for dairy products in New Zealand. And it really had a significant impact on small, medium exporters of dairy products from New Zealand into China. So our business was severely impacted. And I thought, I don't really want to spend another 7 years of my life building something and then seeing it kind of being decimated by something completely outside of my control. So I thought, I still want to start a business, but what should I start? And by then, I've got a family, I've got a mortgage. I thought, okay, I probably can't do a tech startup. I'm not like Justin, he's so courageous. I thought, okay, what business can I start that still has a huge opportunity? So I looked around, and I thought, well, there's quite a few law firms focusing on the Chinese community, and they're all doing very well. And I thought, maybe I can add some value to this community, apply some of the tech know-how that I have, and to modernize the delivery of legal services, in particular to the Chinese community in New Zealand. So I took the plunge that way. I knew that this business will work because people need legal services, but it was a significant time investment. So what it cost me was time. So I went back to uni, came out, worked for a few years, and then I started the law firm. So that's the reason why I switched my career. It wasn't planned as such. I just saw the opportunity. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Kenneth. That's really interesting, journey you've been through. I'm sure a lot of people probably, wouldn't have that very, how to say it, like curly journey, like going around.
Insanity.
But at least you found what you love. So that's really important, So next we have Lucy. Lucy is, you've been heavily involved in the startups sector and, investment sector. And, and then you are involved in the, helping business to scale up and helping them with selecting the right people, HR, the right people, and building the right culture as well. So tell us a bit more about, your work to date and, what motivates you, what, gets you out of bed every day.
Yeah, sure. I haven't started my own business properly, but I really enjoy being part of other early stage companies and the vision that they have. I think what motivates me is maybe three main things. So one is like the ability to kind of make impact at a really fast speed. Having initially worked in a really big corporate law firm, and actually I spent my summer at uni interning at Ernst & Young. I saw the speed at which, those processes would evolve or that things get done. And I think it's just so different in a startup. The smaller you are, the more nimble you can be. And I love seeing the impact we can have on a daily basis for our customers or even internally for our people. And secondly, I personally really thrive off growth. And I think being in a fast moving environment is a really great place to learn really fast. And finally, I really enjoy the people I work with. So it's actually just fun turning up to work with a bunch of similarly motivated, passionate people. I remember when I used to work in my big corporate life times, people would spend their lunch times complaining about work or about their colleagues. And actually in a startup, you're just trying so hard to problem solve all the time. It's just a very different environment. So yeah, that's what motivates me.
Thank you, Lucy. That's really good. I'll got a couple of questions I'll probably ask you later, but we have to move on to Justin. So Justin, you left a secured job, a banking job, and start up your own tech business, which is very insecure and your future is uncertain. So what actually motivates you to do that?
Yeah, that's thanks for the question, Rachel. That's a really interesting question. I do ask myself why sometimes, looking back, some nights, but definitely there's an element of what kind of both Kenneth and Lucy, Lucy kind of mentioned as well. So maybe touching on that point is so I was in banking for about 7 years. I started with ANZ in New Zealand, and then I went over to Singapore as well. It's a banking hub, so I spent just about a year there with ANZ and kind of focused on building out internet banking platforms, digital platforms really. And then I moved back to New Zealand and joined BNZ in the innovation team. So one thing I definitely saw in my time in banking was that a lot of technology was coming in to disrupt sort of financial services. And so, and even, you know, other kind of industries around, when we look at Netflix and we look at, you know, just a whole bunch out there, really. There's so many examples today. But so for me, it's just recognizing that technology can move things, that can create a lot of value to people. And obviously there could potentially be a massive financial reward at the end of that. But then when I look at my journey now, it's, you know, definitely, you know, that was kind of what, you know, motivated me in terms of, hey, you know, I think I can, you know, working with technology, I really can see it being applied to an industry like insurance, where it's quite old school. It's still really hard for people to understand actually what are they covered for, what are they not covered for, what are they spending, can they get something better? Because really no one wants to read through, you know, all those policy documents except perhaps lawyers, which Lucy and Kenneth are. But, you know, most people don't, you know, comb through these things. But I thought technology and digital experiences can really create something very, very useful for people. And actually, you know, so you've obviously got Sharesies on the investment side, so that can make a lot of people a lot of money. But then, you know, insurance is actually so important, because when something does go wrong, you know, and you're not protected, it can actually financially devastate a family or a person. So I really thought, hey, you know, there's an opportunity here for me to go use technology and make an impact, quite a meaningful impact, if we can really do it right. So that's kind of the journey that I've been on for the last couple of years with Quashed.
That's really, really interesting journey you've been going through. So you always like, I think you always, you know, getting involved in the tech innovation space. That's why I was, you know, probably built you the interest of, you know, see the need for change of the insurance sector. So let's move on to our first part, good growth. So a lot of people see, you know, growth is hiring more people, right? And or like you know, adding a new service line, or like making more profit. So so I started with Justin now. So like Justin, like from your perspective, what is a good growth in your sector and for your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really not an easy one, because at an early stage as a startup, you know, we're always looking for growth, and we're really still trying to find, you know, how customers are interacting with the platform that we've created. So, you know, but it's a real fine balance between, hey, do we explore all these different opportunities to grow, or do we kind of narrow ourselves down and sort of focus so we, you know, we can deliver on something. So, you know, I don't think, you know, I think I'm still figuring out. I'm constantly juggling between, you know, both sides of that growth in terms of, do I focus or do I kind of go wide? But I think right from the outset, you know, when I look at, you know, growth for a tech platform like Quash, it's definitely customer base. And again, you know, I point to a local example, Sharesies, you know, they've got 400,000 customers in 4 years, you know. So for me, obviously that is one growth metric that we're going after, to say, hey, you know, can we actually get a whole lot of New Zealanders onto the platform? And that's part of the growth that we're chasing. But, you know, I balance that by going, hey, we need to build something, you know, at this early stage really, you know, valuable for customers in order for that growth to kind of come. So we're always kind of exploring, going, hey, do we add this new feature? So maybe just to share an example, it's, you know, when we started Quash, the starting position was really this platform where people could manage all their existing insurance in one place. Because today you typically deal with 3, 4, 5 different insurance companies, and you've got your policies spread all over the place. So we started with this platform that, you know, you can actually just store it all in one place. You can get this one overview. And then once we've done that, we then discovered customers wanted to compare and look at, you know, are there other covers out there that could be better for me? So we started building that out. Again, all that while sort of getting feedback from customers to understand, hey, where should we grow the platform to? So I think, you know, in a startup at an early stage, it's constantly balancing this growth between, you know, do we keep looking for new opportunities, or do we kind of focus down on you know, and narrow down and get focused on delivering, you know, what's to, you know, right in front of us at the stage. So, but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to have good people kind of around you to be able to help guide you, to say, hey, you might be stretching yourself too thin, you're going too wide. And so now it's time to kind of narrow and focus, I think. So that's probably the lesson that I've learned in my journey.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for your comment on that. Good to learn about, some of the examples you're facing in the early stage. I think there's a lot of probably startups are facing the same, similar, problem as well, whether to adding a new service line or whether to, niche, building on more customer on that service line. So next we have Lucy. So Lucy, you've been working with a lot of startups and working with some of the top CEOs as well. So from your perspective, what is a good growth and what is bad growth? How do you see that? Yeah.
Sure. So I think Justin kind of talked about growth at the early stages in terms of finding product market fit, which he's probably more familiar with. I would say the phase where First AML is at now is I joined maybe about a year ago. We had around 37 people. Now we have close to 90, and we have about 300 customers in Australia and New Zealand. So for us, growth is really about how can we scale? We've kind of seen some early indicators of what is successful for our business, what are the customers' needs, and how do we solve that? But now we want to turn those 300 customers into maybe 3,000 customers. So for us, it's right now we're thinking through, do we expand internationally? So looking at further afield like Singapore and the UK. Or do we double down on our existing product, but expand the scope of our product? And I think the way I think about the prioritization on that is, I think a startup rarely dies for a lack of ideas. Most startups have a lot of ideas but actually they tend to at this phase die from trying too many things at the same time and spreading yourself too thin. So for us, I'd like to see us kind of really prioritize where we can have the most, return on investment for the money we're putting in at this stage, but also be able to experiment with a fixed amount of money. Hey, let's chuck 5 million to that market just to see where it can get us to. And then at the end of 6 months, reassess to see if it's worth going harder on that market. And there's definitely bad growth because I think, in my opinion, bad growth is when you're spending a lot of marketing dollars just to acquire customers, but they don't necessarily stick with you because they realize that you're not the right product for what they're looking for. So that's not the type of growth we would want to be going after.
Thank you, Lucy. That's really good to know. Return on investment, that's pretty important because, the money you spend on the marketing or people, you do want to have returns, positive return rather than negative return. So we move on to Kenneth. So Kenneth, as a lawyer, you probably see a lot of business going up and down. So from your perspective, what is a good growth and what is a bad growth?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So I think to answer that question, I think it's going to be different for every one of us. I think the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what's my life goal? I think it's important to start with that, right? What is your life goal? Because maybe a good size is 100 people, right? And getting listed on NASDAQ or something. But maybe a good size for you is a little law firm of 5 people, 10 people. I think for everyone it is different. It really comes down to what your life goal is. So I think growth, what's good growth is any growth which helps you achieve your goal. Okay, so it may be a smaller boutique law firm or maybe a large tech startup. Because I think at every stage, every size of a company, you're going to have different problems, right? And at a size of where I'm at, 4 or 5 people, you have a set of problems. At 10 people, different set of problems. And with Lucy's First AML, so we're a customer, by the way, of First AML. They do the things that I absolutely hate doing, so I thank them for that. So there are almost 100 people. Then they face a whole suite of different challenges. So I think it doesn't matter at what size you are, you're always going to have problems and challenges, specific to that size. So whether it's a good size, really depending on what your goal is. So if your goal is for, an exit strategy where you want to be listed on an exchange, then growth will be, you got to do it fast, and you have to take on a lot of venture capital funding. You have to get a lot of investors, and that will get you there quicker. But then with investment comes restraint. Not that investment is not good. Investment is really important. But because I'm a lawyer, because I know, right? So, when we prepare these funding, capital raising contracts, the investors will want a certain amount of control. So as an entrepreneur, you start to give away more and more control. But obviously you get the funding to grow, but then you give a lot back, you give up a lot in return. So if your goal is to be, to exit by listing, then yes, that is what you need to do. But if your goal, like myself, is having a small firm, being able to have a team of really good lawyers I can delegate all the work to, so I don't have to do any of the actual grunt work. I can delegate it out, and I can go down to Queenstown. So really depending on what is your life goal, that will determine what is a good size. I think growth for any company is important because you need customers, right? You need income. So you need to grow to a certain extent, but how big that is will depend on different people, and you have to do what is right for you. So maybe a little law firm of 5 people could be the right thing for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Kenneth. So let's move on to the next stage. So next part of the panel discussion about the growth mindset. So having the growth is definitely need the owner or the business owner, the entrepreneurs, to build up the growth mindset. So let's start with Kenneth. Like, how do you actually build up your growth mindset, and what do you do, and any recommendations, advice to people out there?
So for a business, you have to have income to survive. Well, actually, it's not for a business, for everyone, right? But for a business, you must have income to survive. So you must have a growth mindset, right? So you have to think about, how do I promote my firm, my business? How do I increase the number of clients or customers that I have? So a growth mindset is a necessity. You must have that as an entrepreneur. In order to survive, you must have that mentality. So I guess in terms of some, practical steps that I do in terms of a growth mindset. So before starting my law firm, the whole process took me about 6 years, right? So from starting a business perspective, 6 years is a long time, right? From preparing to when I actually start. So 3 of that was back in law school, 3 of that is working for other people. So all throughout that time, I've been thinking and planning about how do I set up the systems of my law firm? How do I market my law firm? So even though it was just an idea in my head, I was planning for 6 years. And some people were surprised, wow, you're able to start a law firm, so quickly out of law school. But what people don't realize is that I've been planning it and thinking about it for 6 years, nonstop, constantly. Even when I'm in lecture hall rooms, I'm thinking about, okay, well, how do I market this? How is this particular law paper going to benefit me in terms of providing services to my client, right? So as I was looking at my younger, so when I went back to uni, most of my classmates are 15 years younger than me, right? So when I look around, I often, I look around their laptop, they're on Facebook, they're on, different social media apps, and doing other things. I'm the old student in the front, just raising my hand and asking questions, and people roll their eyes. That's Kenneth again. So I've been thinking about, so I've been planning about the systems and process, about the law firm, about the product offering, the services not product, but services offering, what services I can provide for my clients. How do I market my firm? So I've read a lot of business books about marketing, doing social media marketing, creating content. So I dabble in like video editing, creating these videos, and kind of explaining very different legal concepts. How do I promote them through WeChat, through YouTube? How do I use Google AdWords? So I was doing all of this, and during those 6 years' time. So when I was able to start my firm, I was able to hit the ground running, and it was in the middle of the lockdown, but I was able to hit the ground running because I had that growth mentality for a long time.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you, Kenneth. Yeah, I mean, it's like not a lot of us probably like just have a business idea and just start straight away. And it's really good to hear that you actually, thinking about 6 years. Like technology changes. Like in the tech industry. Otherwise, 6 years gone, like someone else might have the idea. I mean, but yeah, it's really the persistence and then the early thinking at the very early stage. That's really good. So next we have Lucy. Lucy, so working with a lot of like, fast growing startup business and, a lot of like senior managers and CEOs, from your observation, like, how do they build up their growth mindset, or have you got any like, recommendations and, how people actually can grow, they build up their growth mindset?
Yeah, sure. I think it's actually, it sounds really simple, but it's harder said than done. It's like actually the power of feedback. I think as a company gets larger, it's very typical the senior management team gets more and more removed away from what's happening at the ground level. So they kind of live in a potentially like ivory tower strategic level, but it's really hard to know what's going on the ground. And that's when people are dealing with customers, dealing with operational issues. So it's really important to have like good feedback mechanisms that go upwards in terms of making sure the leaders are understanding what's actually happening on the ground. So they set strategy that's actually relevant for what the people are going to execute on. So like feedback internally in terms of business process, but also like performance, like being able to tell your manager or tell your direct report, like, where are you doing well, but where can you also work on? Having those candid conversations are, I think, very important, because if you don't tell people about it, then everyone just keeps on going their way thinking that it's working, when actually it could lead to some really bad blind spots. And secondly, feedback outwards in terms of getting feedback from your customers, like making sure you're on regular calls with your key customers, or really doing like deep dive questions in terms of what are their problems, how are we solving things for them, or how are we not, and where we can improve. So yeah, for me, I think it really comes back to creating a good culture around feedback, realizing it's not personal, it's just about how can we all improve together.
Thank you, Lucy. That's really good to know. And, it's always good to know, like, some feedbacks from customers and from like, the staff, which can help the company to actually improve on continuous improvement. So next we'll move on to Justin. So Justin, how do you actually build up your, growth mindset, and anything you recommend people, or anything you've been reading on, or anything you've been working on, you want to share with us?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, it's fascinating here, Kenneth's journey and sort of what Lucy was sharing as well. Definitely echo their kind of sentiment there around, being inquisitive and always learning and communicating. I think those are two really important things. The other thing that I found to be really useful for me, it's actually just, there's just so much material out there, on the web. There's literally nothing you can't learn about, maybe except building, rockets and things like that. But probably there's some resource somewhere around that. But literally, to Kenneth's point earlier, you can learn about Google Ads. I've kind of done that, spend a weekend doing a course on that, because I had to go and figure out how I was going to do that. And then, spend another weekend doing Facebook ads. And, so there's literally everything you can learn on the web. So I would say around consuming sort of knowledge is to keep growing it. I think it does two things for me. It inspires me to see what people can actually achieve, and that's always really good. You kind of always need that boost, especially when you get into when you're front into a hurdle or something challenging. But then when you look to other people that have overcome their challenges, is always very inspiring. So that kind of keeps me moving and motivated. But secondly, you can learn from the wisdom of others, and I think for me that's really, really important to kind of see how people have grown their businesses. And even talking to, funnily enough, the founders of First AML, Miller and the likes, it's been very helpful, because they're a few years ahead of us in terms of the journey, in terms of where their startup, they're like a Series B startup now, so not quite a startup anymore the way I think about it. They've done really, really well, and so it's always very inspiring, and there's always a whole lot I can learn. So yeah, I think my point is around there's a whole lot of knowledge out there, whether it's on the web or whether it's through your networks. I would say definitely tap into that to help you grow, and have that sort of mindset around what can be done.
Thank you, Justin. I'm pretty sure, like, a lot of you has actually spent a lot of your, time, personal time, and working maybe like, 996, what we call like a 996, or maybe like, like even longer than that, like in during the week, and to actually building up the growth mindset. So next, just interesting, question to know, what have you been sacrificed to actually, building up your journeys. So Justin, we can start with you, like, anything you've been sacrificed during this long journey, anything you're missing on.
Yeah, lots. My wife would say the same thing, but I think I mean, it's always when you make a choice, there's always going to be something that you're missing out on. The cost of that choice, the opportunity cost, essentially. So for me, it's moving from a stable corporate sort of job with a decent income, into sort of the unknown, and so sacrificing that was a big part, and I think it was really hard initially to kind of get across that. But when I did take the leap, then again, it's just surrounding myself with people that have kind of taken that leap, then it made it kind of easier. But I would say it's in the same breath, I feel like when you do make sacrifices on the other side, there's usually a lot to be gained as well. So I wouldn't look at, hey, essentially I wouldn't let the sacrifices that you think you've got to make hold you back from the potential opportunities on the other side. I think for me, that's kind of what I feel I've learned. So definitely, sacrifice a lot of time, sleep, potential income. But then again, it's looking on the other side going, hey, what could be on the other side, and just giving it a real go.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like a lot of entrepreneurs are actually sacrifice a lot of time and sleep, and and they leisure time on their business, working on their baby. The business is like a baby to them. So then move on to Lucy. Lucy, what have you been sacrificed? Helping other people on their business, which you might not be your own business.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting that like the entrepreneurial journey. Like when I worked in VC in Singapore, a lot of my friends were founders, and just seeing their journey, the ups and downs, like you have like 800 people on your payroll and you're 2 weeks out from cash zero. Like I could never live with that kind of like roller coaster ride, which is maybe why I haven't started my own thing. Like I think when you care about your work, you like, even now I'm not a founder, but I already think about it a lot, and I can only imagine what it's like being like, I don't know, in Justin or Kenneth's position. So props to you guys. But I think personally for me, what I found really interesting was when I worked in Singapore, people worked really long hours, a lot of FaceTime sometimes, but it was just genuinely very hard work. Whereas when I worked in Amsterdam, you look at how good they do the work-life balance thing, and there are some really impressive startups that come out of the Netherlands, like Booking.com or Adyen, and you kind of like, how do they become so successful without the whole rat race mentality? And I think the world is also coming around to realize like having balance, giving yourself a proper holiday, refreshing your mindset is actually good for the long term, because I think we also hear about a lot about like founder burnout and all these things. So yeah, I think we can sacrifice a lot of things, but I question whether we need to all the time. Like maybe there are going to be periods of like bursts of like energy and stuff, but I think you also need to give yourself a break sometime along those ways.
That's very good advice. Like it's really good to know. We have to, now they keep talking about like work-life balance. That's what we all try to do, but sometimes, you just like know, but you just don't do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. So then we'll move on to Kenneth. What have you been, sacrificing your life in order to, to achieve where you are now?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So I think before I talk about the sacrifice, I want to talk about it is really good to the upside of being an entrepreneur, right? So right now, I'm my own boss. I don't have to seek permission to take any leave. So it's have all the things I'm able to do with my kids, and so I think if you see a problem that you can solve, and that problem bothers a lot of people, then you definitely have to take the plunge and try to solve that problem by starting a business. I think that is, like what Justin has done. He saw a problem, he took the plunge, and is definitely worth it if that problem is worth solving. So in terms of the sacrifice for myself, that 6-year journey, going back to law school, is, I think back and I shudder, because it's such a, it's a very arduous journey, because, going back to uni, I went back to uni when I was 34. Like I said, all my classmates were a decade or more younger than me. I remember sitting in my first lecture in B28 in the library. I took a selfie of myself sitting there. And my expression was like, what am I doing here, right? What am I doing? I'm doing law and society. First paper, first day. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And I think back and I think I was insane. Knowing how hard it is, looking back, I don't know where I got the courage, but having said that, I think sometimes you don't want to overanalyze. If you think too much, you never take the plunge. But when you take the plunge, it's just one step at a time, even though it's a huge mountain, but you just think it's just one step at a time. And then eventually, so you just look immediately in front of you. You don't try to look too far ahead. Even I do plan ahead, but I don't want to look too far ahead. It's a bit of a paradox, but it's like you know where you're going, but then you look down immediately and just look at the immediate steps and just one step before in front of another. It was also hard after uni, because I have to work because New Zealand Law Society says you have to work for 3 years for other people before you can work for yourself. And going back and starting from the bottom, law firms are very strange. Law firms are very hierarchical, right? Even New Zealand, we're very progressive, but law firms in New Zealand generally is very hierarchical. It's bizarre. It's like working in the 1960s. And if you work as a junior, you start from the bottom. It was just it's not a very pleasant experience. I also told myself, when I start my firm, none of that, right? So I kind of take a lot of kind of the tech working environment, but I do know some of the tech environments that work very long hours, but that's not me. 40-hour weeks, I think that's plenty for my team. I don't want to burn anybody out. So I want to take the good from the tech scene and try to implement that in a law firm environment. So in terms of sacrifice, it was a very long sacrifice, and I'm very fortunate. I had a lot of support from my wife, my family, because I had 3 kids going through law school, and that I don't recommend that. But in hindsight, thinking, I shudder when I think back, but I'm very thankful that I had the support to be able to take this journey, because it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Thank you, Rachel. Back to you.
So looking into the future now. So so we move on to Justin. So looking to the future, in next 6 to 12 months, what do you think about business going, and what are the main challenges you'll be facing in the next 6 to 12 months, and how do you think you might be overcoming the challenge?
Yeah, no, thanks, Rachel. I think the next 6 to 12 months would be really interesting. I mean, just because of where the economy's at with, COVID and lockdown and coming out of that, hopefully very soon, it'll be really interesting to kind of see, how the economy bounces back. I think the key challenge for us at the stage of the startup is really about how do we keep maintaining growth. It's really important. So we've got a small team, we've got a lot to do. How do we kind of get focused, pick the right sort of battles to go into, and really focus. And at the same time, we're adding people to the team. So I think finding good talent and the right people that really understands what you're trying to build towards. I think Lucy touched on that earlier, and it's super important that that the people that come in really understand where we want to go, and really our mission and purpose is to help people easily protect themselves so that they can avoid sort of financial devastation if something bad does happen. So it's really cool, to be able, well, it's a great challenge, I think, to be able to find the right people that believes in what you're trying to do, and have them come along on the journey, because I think they add a lot of value. And so I think that's probably, one of the challenges that I kind of see, it's finding the right people to come join us on this journey as we kind of keep growing in terms of customers. So we want to, again, get to sort of get into we started off, I think early in the year in the hundreds, and now we're in the thousands of customers, and then we want to get to the tens of thousands of customers, and then, keep kind of growing that way. So for us, that's obviously always going to be a challenge to kind of maintain that growth. But hopefully we keep building the right products, and, people love it, and they'll tell other people about it, and we'll kind of get there. So yeah, as to what Kenneth said, put one foot in front of the other and kind of keep going. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I think finding the right people is always a challenge for all of us, especially with entrepreneurs. When you're starting off, you always want to, finding the right people can help you out, but it's always been challenging because but you guys probably, already medium size or like a larger size company. Before even, one man band, that would be like even more difficult to find the right people. So we'll move on to Lucy. So what do you think is going to be the challenge for the next 6 to 12 months time for your role or for your industry, AML side, like or for the business?
Sure. So I would like to also say hiring is going to be like probably most people's focus, but I'm going to park that because we've already agreed. Actually, I think what is really interesting is as we add more people and going into new markets, I'm definitely spending a lot of time thinking through our operating model, because once you add more people, it's like, how do they all communicate? Like if we're in different time zones, like here, Singapore, UK, or we have different teams that are often working on things that might be quite separate but end up affecting each other. Like how do we get people to not work in silos? And also how do we get people to feel empowered that what they do matters? Because it's very typical, the bigger the company gets, everyone feels like, maybe a bit underappreciated, or people don't notice the work that they're doing. They're not sure how it contributes to the overall goal. So I think, thinking a lot through about how we communicate and make people feel empowered to do their best work. In terms of the AML side, the expansion part, like we're entering into new markets that we're not entirely familiar with the legal framework yet. Maybe it's going to be similar to New Zealand because we're entering into Commonwealth markets, but it's going to take a lot of like market research, understanding the local compliance environment to go into those markets, because every new market we enter into, that is like basically a new business. Like we hire a GM there, we hire local sales, local customer people, so that we can tailor something that suits the local market.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Now next we move on to Kenneth. Just I'm conscious with time here. So Kenneth, so what do you think is the next challenging path for you for the next 6 to 12 months besides hiring?
Besides hiring, I think the challenge is always law firms always tie with hiring, because lawyers, we sell time. So as we increase, so if I add on a new lawyer, how do I keep my team busy, right? How do I keep them selling their time? So that's always in my mind. How do I? And it's a bit of it's a tricky thing. Is that do you hire? I can't get away from hiring. But do you hire when you have the need, or do you anticipate the need and you hire? I think that's always a challenge for a law firm like mine, because I don't want my team to burn out. And I think over the last month we're really, really busy. And as lawyers, because we're selling time, right? When you're busy, you start to work very long hours. And I don't like I'm a firm believer of 40-hour weeks. I'm a firm believer of 40-hour weeks. So I don't really want to, I don't want to, I guess, overwork my team. So it's about really anticipating the growth and adding the team and adding people, even though we might not be at that stage of growth, but still adding members and adding a new member to the team. So I think that'll be the challenge over the next 6 months. Also, I think in terms of for small businesses, it's really about systems and process. For a small firm like me, it's a bit easier. It's easier than like for Lucy in a bigger firm where you a lot more people in terms of communication system structure is a lot more complex. For myself, for my firm, Microsoft Teams is fine, but it's really just kind of thinking about how do I build the system which can sustain, say, 15 people, even though I only have 4.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thanks for sharing that. And then that was really good to know that when you do the training, you actually record it so you can reuse it for the next one. A lot of us can probably utilize that, advice. So before we move on to the Q&A, maybe just like one final piece of advice.
I think always be on the lookout for a problem that you want to solve. So, and I think a good way to scratch your own itch. So the reason why I started my law firm is because I looked at my personal experience with my lawyers in the past, and I thought I can probably do it better. To be perfectly honest, I thought I can do that better. I had my own itch and I scratched it. So look to your own itch. What's your problem? What's the thing you really hate? And then build a solution to solve that problem. I think that would be my advice.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you.
So one last piece of advice, Lucy, for everyone out there.
Yeah, I think like professionally and personally, like the hard times, it's like it's gonna be hard, even though to you it might seem like a huge thing. Like for example, like when you're a 10-person company, you're like, oh my God, I need my first 10 customers. And once you're at like, I don't know, 100 customers, you're like, I need my next 1,000 customers. So like there's always going to be things you're going to overcome, but actually when you're facing it, it feels very overwhelming sometimes. So I think like having a really good support system to kind of be able to talk it out is really helpful. Like it's all about like managing your mental psychology, actually, in my personal opinion, whether it's professional or personal. So yeah, like personally, I think like meditation helps, or like just being able to take a much more like step back, objective view on things, and having like either leadership coaching or like a therapist or a family and friends that you can kind of talk it out through. Because I think the hardest part is like when you feel like you're going through it alone and you can't share it with people.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy. And Justin, your turn.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, can I say get your insurance sorted on Quash so that burden off your shoulders? But I think, yeah, for me, I think having gone through the journey myself, I think a lot. The one advice I would give is really don't let fear stop you from taking that leap of faith, because a lot of it is actually in our own heads. Kind of to Lucy's point there, really, a lot of fears that I had in my head was just blown out of proportion. Whether it's putting myself out there, even talking on calls like these and attending my first conference and speaking publicly, a lot of it was just so much in my head. I'm just like, people probably will forget about me 5 minutes after this call, so it's all good. Even if I mess up. So, I think that approach will kind of help you take that next step. So don't let fear kind of hold you back.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, so now we move on to the Q&A. So we have like a one question. So people been upvoting the question. So we have the first question from Christina. So one question I want to ask all 3 members of the panel, how your business has been affected by COVID-19 and the lockdown, and what have you done to overcome the hurdles and mitigate the impact on your business? So let's start with maybe Justin.
Yeah, sure. I think, as an early stage team, we're kind of a team of 7 or 8 of us kind of working together. And I think because we're still so young as a team, one of the challenges was, straight away going into sort of this remote working situation and not having, the ability to just turn around and talk to someone. But I think, we've just kind of gotten used to it and kind of, I think we've implemented a few different strategies, looked at how people work more efficiently. So having a stand up every morning and sort of a debrief at the end of the day has been really, really helpful. So, for us was really communicating and working through hurdles as a team, as a young team. That was really I felt that was probably the big sort of hurdle for us, with COVID and lockdown.
Okay, so we can move on to Lucy.
Sure. So I think maybe COVID impacts the business in 2 ways, like externally, yeah, like for us, because our business is really reliant on people signing up new customers because they have to go through AML process with them, or like transactions of real estate volumes in the market. So when we are in lockdown, there's not much real estate going on. So I think like during the initial phase of lockdown, our business's revenue would have taken a hit. But as we come out of lockdown, actually, it comes back in like really kind of like high volume for some strange reason. Like I think across the board professional services last year has been really busy, like the law firms, accounting firms, and so on. So yeah, I think the initial dip is really scary in terms of revenue, but luckily we are venture backed, so cash flow is not like we not live and die by our monthly revenues. But we have evolved our pricing model or our business model to make sure we're more resilient against the up and down volume fluctuation. So that's one thing on the business side we've done to mitigate that. And then I think internally, it's just like everyone's just a bit over being in lockdown, being away from people, like the loss of like feeling connected. You know, after a day of Zoom calls, you can feel like just really tired because you're not having those social breaks in between. So that I haven't quite like figured out how to solve yet. We can infuse like fun online activities. I did a like little painting session over Zoom with one of our customer success teams. But yeah, I think we all kind of just have to try our best to make kind of lift each other up in those times. But there's not necessarily a magic bullet for that one.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. And Kenneth, your turn.
We're still busy and we're still billing, you know, our meeting our billing targets, but the pipeline before it was dwindling. So I started to sense that the pipeline of work was been dwindling, but now actually we're kind of really busy now again as we're coming out of lockdown. Like what Lucy said, I can sense the I guess the change in terms of the number of clients coming in and number of consultations, making bookings with me. So I think as we come out of lockdown, I think, you know, there might be a bit of I can feel a bit of a rebound. Yeah, so I think I'm quite optimistic.
So, you know, thank you so much for sharing all these, you know, your experience and some examples of how actually, you know, like you actually started your business, and thanks for everyone sending through the questions. Unfortunately, we only have you know, time, you know, this time for this question, and hopefully you can joining us for next round. Then we can, you know, answering more questions and try to I will keep eye on time a bit more. So for all the alumni out there, remember you're not alone. You know, even during the lockdown, we're still here for you, and you're part of the, you know, world-class university. And you know, stay connected, joining us on Facebook, adding us on LinkedIn, and joining us on WeChat group as well. So, you know, after this event, there is PowerPoint slide with how you can joining us on Facebook or all these page and all these social media page. And we want to help you with your career, your journey, your business, and also we want to get connected with you, especially during this, you know, difficult time for a lot of people. And thanks for everyone joining our event, the 2021 Entrepreneurship Series Virtual Edition. I encourage you to stay connected with us on social media so you don't miss the next event. To do so, you will see the ending slides with how to join. Enjoy rest of your morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are around the world, and hopes to see you again. Take care. 祝大家身体健康，事业顺利。我们2022见。